Our demo today, from the point of view of a location manager within our company, we've asked them to actually log into the system and update a forecast for their location. So the first thing they would do is come to the intranet page through any web browser and log in with their credentials. When they log in, you can see that they can actually update the forecast. We're going to go ahead and click on that link. The next screen shows the workflow process for their location. Over on the left-hand side, depending on my security, I can see the different locations with my company. And in a few minutes, we're going to log in as administrator, and we can see the entire organization. On the right-hand side of the screen, I can see the location that I've got selected, what the status is of that forecast. Reserved means it's actually been opened and started. If it was red, it would mean that that person had not even opened up the forecast yet. I can see who the owner of that forecast is. If I scroll over to the right, I can see the last time the forecast was saved for this current month that we're doing, and if there are any comments that are attached to my forecast. Either I can put comments attached to this forecast so that anybody else that's up the tree that's looking at my forecasted data could see those comments. Or maybe I'm waiting to complete a forecast because I'm waiting for a number from somebody. I can actually attach that as a comment here. And I can actually attach a document as well. So in this case, I've attached an Excel document with some figures in it, and I can actually double click on that and open up that Excel document if I want to. Let me go ahead and open up my forecast now. I'll show you the template. You'll notice that my forecast is split up into several tabs. This is a completely customizable interface. This is just the way that this particular company wanted to split up their forecast into columns and rows. And this company is doing a daily revenue forecast and then a monthly expense forecast. So here we're starting out on the daily revenue tab. Right now this model is set to be in December of the current year. And the system is automatically bringing in actual data every day. And so if I wanted to actually look at how I've been doing January through November, I could actually expand any of these month columns and see the individual days under that and see how I'm selling each item as compared to last year. And if I scroll way over to the right, I can actually look and see how my daily revenue is trending. But we're asking the location manager to actually update the forecast for December only at this point. So I've got December split out at this point. And so I can look at the day-by-day forecast down here. And you'll notice there's some columns that are grayed out, have a gray background. Those are calculated within the system and they're not updatable. For instance, this first column that's grayed out is the number of items that I sold last year. That's coming automatically from the system based upon the day that you have selected. The next column over is actually the number of items that I'm projecting to sell for this day for this year. So you can see this first item I'm projecting to sell 90, whereas last year on the same day I sold 102. The next set of columns over just for the next item over, and again this is completely customizable. This is the way this company wanted to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and update some of these numbers real quick. This first one I'm going to adjust to 94, and item 2 I'm going to say 24, and item 1 for day 2 23. Okay. Over on the right-hand side, I've actually got my prices. So I can see very quickly, last year I actually sold this item on December 1st for $92.80, but someone has actually keyed in a $990 price for this year. I think that's not correct, so I'm going to go ahead and update that to maybe 99. Maybe that was a typo. And For day 2, they had an $88.26 price last year. It's $86 this year. Go ahead and keep that. And for items 2, $102 and $90. Let's go ahead and keep those prices. I'm going to go ahead and calculate now because I want to see how this is actually updated my forecast. I'm just going to hit the enter key. When the system calculates and comes back, what it has done is it's recalculated each day's forecast, calculated anything that was dependent upon those numbers, reconsolidated for not only my entity, but the entire organization. And so that anybody potentially up the tree that is looking at my forecast that I'm completing could see those numbers. And again, that's customizable. If you want those numbers to be shown above the tree that you're completing right now, or if you want to wait until they're actually submitted. Okay? You notice that a bunch of numbers have popped up in blue. That's because those numbers have been impacted by something that I've keyed into the system. Either a recalculation has been made based upon data entry, or I physically changed those numbers. So very quickly I can see that I changed the items sold, quantity sold. The system's recalculated the total items sold that I've projected for the day. My capacity percentage. And if I scroll over to the right, I can actually see that the system's recalculated my revenue day by day. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the month, I can see now that I'm projecting to have a $259,000 total revenue for the month. Okay. Next, I'm going to jump over to my expense side of my forecast to see how I'm going to do over there. Now, on this screen, you can see it's a little bit different format. This company wanted to have accounts down the row, so each individual account that the location is responsible for forecasting is shown here. And you've got both the months across the top as columns, as well as different what we call scenarios. So the first set of columns is for our forecast that we're actually forecasting now. The next set is what we had actually budgeted for that month. And the next column for each month is what we've done last year. So I can scroll to the right and see how we're trending throughout the year, both compared to last year as compared to budget, and then I can actually update my forecast here. Each account is driven off of a factor over on the right where it says rate. And in my description of my account, it says what the factor is. So for instance, this bad debt expense is actually driven off of a percentage of total revenue. This dollar amount that I'm forecasting is only updatable by changing the percentage. Okay? So if I wanted to change that from a 12 to a 13, I simply type in the number, hit enter. The system will recalculate based upon the revenue that I keyed in on the other tab and automatically update that bad debt expense. I can also attach comments to any one of these cells as well. You'll notice that there's a comment attached to the cell with the red hashtag, and I can either view or add additional comments by just right-clicking on that and type in the text that I want to. Okay. If I want to look at existing comments that are there, click on Browse Comments, I can see who keyed in the comment, what date they keyed it in, and what the actual comment is. These comments are available up the tree, so if you were doing a report on a particular location later on, you could actually view those comments as well. If I scroll down to the bottom with all the accounts that I can actually update for this particular location. The security within the system can be very minute. I could lock in particular accounts for particular user groups for particular locations if I needed to. So in the case where there may be some payroll accounts per se that you don't want certain people to be able to access, you can actually lock down those accounts for particular locations and security groups. Okay. Now I'm going to jump over to my monthly forecast tab. This tab was designed to be a summary of my entire location within the system, and shows me where my forecast is at this point as compared to the rest of the months within the year. I've got a total column on the very left-hand side, and this tab, again, is consolidating everything from all the other tabs that I've keyed in, and it's showing me what I've impacted from the last time I actually saved the data. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen, I can actually look at my net income for the month. And I can see at this point, with my forecast, I'm actually projecting to lose $33,000 for the month. Whereas last month, because this is now an actual number for November, I actually made $168,000 last month. So pretty big swing in my forecast. And so I may want to play around with these numbers and see, maybe what I could do within my location to bring that up as far as the forecast is concerned. But what I want to do right now is go ahead and save the data that we've actually keyed in so that I can come back to it. And to save the data, all I'm going to do is click on the green check mark up in the toolbar. And at this point, I now want to create what's called a sandbox within the system. I want the ability to be able to do some ad hoc scenario-based planning, or be able to change the numbers within my forecast to see what I could potentially do to bring up that income for December, so that $33,000 loss. I want to see how I can actually improve that. But I don't want anybody else to see what I'm playing around with. So TM1 comes with a functionality called sandboxing, which basically copies the data to my own personal workspace area that I can play around with and manipulate, and then compare that to what I've saved in my normal version. So I'm going to come up here and create a new sandbox. And I'm going to just create a sandbox name here. Hit OK. And you can see now that I'm within my sandbox called Adjust New Rates. At this point, any data that I change is just within this Adjust New Rates. The forecast that I've keyed in and actually saved is intact until I decide that I potentially want to take data from my sandbox and push it up to my real forecast. Okay. So now that I'm in my Just New Rates sandbox, I'm going to go back to my Daily Revenue tab, and I'm going to see what would happen if maybe I increased my prices every day for the month of December by 25%. What would that do to my net income for the month? Okay? But I don't want to potentially come December 1st through the 31st and figure out what my new sales prices are day by day. I can come down to the bottom of the month, the monthly total, and I can do what's called a data spread, and I can automatically adjust each one of these prices by a certain percentage if I want to. So to do that, all I've got to do is right-click on that number and do a data spread, and I've got all these data spread techniques that I can actually use that come default with the system. I'm going to click percent change, and I'm going to key in a 25% change, and I'm going to add 25% to the prices that are there. And when I click apply, you see that the system goes day by day and actually updates each one of those numbers, reconsolidates the average price down to the monthly total, and gives me that. And of course, it highlights what it changed in blue. I'm going to do the same thing for item 2. And with this one, I'm going to increase by 30%. And I'm going to add 30%. Okay. And you'll see over the right-hand side, it now gives me a total revenue of $325,000 for the month. And now, if I jump over to monthly forecast, I can see how that would have impacted my net income for the month. So if I scroll over a little bit, I can now see that my December net income went from a negative $30,000 to positive $14,000. So I can see that I'm making some headway. So I may want to do some additional changes, maybe at the expense side, see what would happen if I reduce some of my expenses, etc. Maybe increase some of my quantity. Anyway, I can play around with those numbers within my sandbox without impacting what I've keyed into my forecast itself. I'm going to go ahead and at this point jump back to what I had saved. So maybe I've determined that these changes that are in my sandbox really just can't happen, and I'm going to go ahead and submit my forecast as it was with the $33,000 loss. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save again, and I'm going to submit my forecast to my manager. To submit the forecast, all that I do is click on the Submit button, and yes. And you'll notice up in the toolbar, it now says that my forecast is locked. You'll also notice that all the columns are grayed out at this point. So even if I go back to my daily revenue tab, where I could do some data entry before, it's now grayed out, which means that this particular employee cannot make any changes to this forecast until the forecast is either rejected and sent back to this employee, or the whole process starts over again. So it's completely locked. So at this point, we're going to log out as the location manager, and we're going to log in as a system administrator, so you can actually see the entire organization here. Again, we can open up the forecast. But this time when we come in, we can actually see the entire company because we came in as an administrator. So I can see how the company rolls up in different regions, and I can see each individual location and where they are as far as status goes. And I can see here that the North region has actually got two hotels, or two locations that we're looking at, that have actually submitted their forecast and they're locked. I can see very quickly that the other locations within the regions have not even started their forecast yet. The forecast is available, but no one's taken ownership of it, and nobody's actually submitted that forecast for approval yet. And I can see very quickly that the West, South, and the East regions don't have any locations that have started their forecast at all. So if this is the last forecast day of the month, and you come in here and you can see that nobody's actually completed their forecast, and they spark some emails or phone calls to these locations and say, why are you not working on your forecast at all? Again, you've got the same functionality as far as comments, attaching comments to each location, or the roll-ups if you want to. And I can actually open up these locations as well at the rolled-up level. So if I'm say a VP or the president of the company or even within accounting, and I've got security access to see these different locations, and I want to see where we're at right now as far as a total company forecast, I can actually look at that by clicking the top level, and I can open up my forecast template, same forecast templates that we were looking at for each individual location, but rolled up for the company at this level. So this first one, we're going to look at daily revenue. Okay. So here I can look at the total items across my entire company that I'm going to sell by day. If I scroll over to the right, my total revenue for the entire company by day. So if I come over to monthly forecast and scroll down to net income, I can see where I'm projected to be as far as net income for the entire company. Just a minute to recalculate. Just go down to the bottom, look at net income. I'm actually projected to lose close to $894,000 for the month for December. But this is as of this point in the forecast. Okay, so we've still got a bunch of locations that have not updated their forecast for the month, so there may be some potential there to bring up our forecast a little bit. Okay, so at this point we're going to switch over the demo to an analyst point of view and show you some of the Excel functionality of TM1, the slicing and dicing capabilities within the system. So I'm going to jump down here to my cube viewer, that's what it's called, and TM1 comes with an add-in to Excel. You can also access this through what's called TM1 Web. So at that point you would need any software installed on each client. But this is TM1, the TM1 Cube Viewer. So the cubes are what it's actually storing the data behind the scenes of what we were just keying in from our forecast. And this is actually the forecast cube where all that data is actually landing. And you can see, I'm going to refresh my view here. These blue boxes on my screen are what's called dimensions. These are the things that I can slice and dice my data by. So I've got a scenario here, which is forecast, actual, or budget, etc. I've got my different locations within my organization. I've got a year. I've got months that right now I've got going across as columns. And I've got particular accounts that I can drill in on. And let's say, as an analyst or power user, I want to be able to compare a few KPIs, key performance indicators, across all of my hotels, across all months, forecast to budget. Okay. Now I can do that directly from the screen without calling IT and having them create another report or extracting base data and exporting it to Excel. I can quickly create that analysis right here on the screen. And the first thing I'm going to do is pick the KPIs that I actually want to include. So let's pick net income, net cash, and say total overhead. Okay? And I want total overhead down at the bottom. And I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to pick the locations that I want to include. So I'm going to click and drag and drop that right next to my account. And I'm going to pick the properties that I want to include in my analysis. Okay. All right. You'll notice the system is automatically recalculating for me each time I'm selecting. And you can see very quickly I'm changing up my analysis with not a whole lot of effort at this point. So now I'm going to click and drag and drop that scenario down here. And I'm going to say now, I'm going to go in here and pick forecast versus budget. So I'm going to come in here and pick forecast and budget. Okay. And now I'm going to drop this measure up top so we don't have so many columns. And now let's say I want to swap these columns. I want the property with my KPIs together, grouped together. So I can just click and drag and swap these two columns. And so now I can see that I've got each of my properties or each of my locations that I'm looking at for my three KPIs across months, forecast to budget. Well, let's say now I want to swap these. I want all the forecasts together and all the budget together. So I can just drop those. So again, I'm very quickly changing this analysis around. I'm not having to recreate spreadsheets, etc. So at this point, now I want to create an Excel spreadsheet with this data in it. I can very quickly do that by clicking on one of these links up at the top. And we're going to start off with a slice. What a slice does is actually takes that data and actually sends it to Excel. And if you'll notice, up in the formula bar, it's actually created formulas that are linked back to the cube behind the scenes. At this point, it's an Excel spreadsheet. It's just basic report. And so I can insert rows, I can insert columns. And let's say I wanted to do a variance here. I can very quickly just add my own calculation. And copy that down. And if I recalculate, the system actually keeps any changes that I've keyed in, recalculates that amount based upon the amounts coming from TM1. So I can create my own calculations within the Excel spreadsheet. I can do any formatting that I want to within the spreadsheet as well. So let's come here and format this as comma. We can put a dollar sign on it. We can bold it. Do whatever you want to. And if I want to recalculate, simply just recalculate. I can also insert rows, columns, graphs, do any Excel formatting that I want to within the spreadsheet, which means that you can basically create your own customized templates that report off TM1 data from the system and save those templates and either put them out on TM1 Web or in an application folder, they're called. It's a centralized location that TM1 users can go grab these templates. Users can open them and simply change their month and recalculate, and they've got the most current up-to-date data for the month. So as you close your financial statements, you can actually just direct them to those templates, have them open them up, and see the most current data. You can also up here, let's say I originally created this report for 2011, now I wanted to see what it was for 2010. I just double click on that, pick a new year, and recalculate. And you'll notice all my numbers change based upon whatever I've selected. And I can expand these out and actually see the numbers here. So again, I can create these templates within Excel and save them so that they can come back to later. Okay. Another thing that I'd like to show you real quickly is the data spreading technique within the Cube Viewer. So we looked a little while ago about spreading at a monthly level, changing all the days within the month automatically based upon a percentage. But this is also useful after, like, say, a forecast is rolled up and submitted. In this case, this company is looking at the building repair and maintenance account forecast for the current period. So all the locations at this point have submitted their forecast. It's been finalized and it's been rolled up. And as of right now, the company's sitting at a $1.5 million expense for December of the year that they're forecasting. And let's say that the president of the company comes back and says that $1.5 million is just too high. We actually need to reduce it to $1 million, and we want the allocation of that $1 million to be the same percentage as each location was to 1.5 before. So I can very quickly change that at a consolidated level. It will automatically push it down to each location without having to reopen all those templates and reconsolidate the templates and send them back to corporate or resubmit them. All that I need to do, again, is right-click on the number that I want to change and do what's called a data spread again. And this time I want to do a proportional spread. And I want to spread $500,000, and I want to subtract $500,000 in total where I'm at now, so I should end up with a total of $1 million up here. And when I click apply, you notice what the system did is it came through and it changed every number that was populated before by the percentage, re-rolled up everything, and now I'm back at $1 million. Okay? So this is all security driven, so if you get security rights to do so, you can actually update everybody's forecast in total from the back end through what's called a data spread. Okay? Where I'd like to finish up this morning is to show you the data logging capabilities within the system. So TM1 is tracking every single change that a user makes to the system. What time they logged into the system, what they changed the values from, what they changed them to, what they impacted. So as an administrator, I can actually come into this log, and I go to view transaction log, and I'm going to hone in on a particular cube that I was updating within my forecast. And it's called the daily revenue cube. So when I click OK, I can see that within the past few hours, these are the transactions that have been keyed in to the system. I can see what time they logged in, and right now this is set to Greenwich Mean Time. What the user was, so who the user that actually logged into the system, what the values were before they changed them, and then what they changed them to, what cube they impacted, and then I scroll over to the right, I can see what location they keyed in or impacted, the year, the accounts, and the days that they're actually touched. So I have the ability as well to select these transactions, either all of them or just a few, and actually back them out. And TM1 will actually create an offsetting transaction to the original item and actually move those values back to the old value based on which ones you've selected. So if you've got a user that calls you up and says, I've just keyed in a bunch of information in my forecast, can you undo it? The answer is yes. And you don't have to call IT and have them restore from a backup or export from another model, etc. You can come directly in the transaction log, select the transactions that you want to back out, and just do an edit back out. And the system actually undoes what their data entry was, and actually shows on the log that the original entry went in and that you as the administrator actually backed that transaction out. So auditors looking at the system logs can actually see that data entry as well. Okay. So lastly, what I'm going to show you is an example of a dashboard that is driven off of TM1 data. So this is a Cognos BI dashboard that's been created, and this is just off of Cube data. The integration with Cognos BI is seamless. The minute the data is changed within TM1, it's visible and drillable within Cognos BI. So this is just an example of some of that data consolidated across by organization. In this case, we're looking at the one location that we were actually updating in the forecast that is actually updated automatically within Cognos BI from TM1. So that's it for this portion of the demo. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and thanks again.